We are Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 presented by Stakes. Blake, we had a great last week of basketball where a lot of teams from the SEC played other good teams, which gives us a frame of reference. We've kind of been wanting for a bit to get into our power rankings as we head into the third week of basketball, fourth week, whatever this is. This is anyway the post-Thanksgiving round of power rankings. We start at the bottom where we've got three teams kind of close together, although when we did our staff power rankings, we didn't have really much debate on this. We've got South Carolina 14, Georgia 13, and Vanderbilt at 12.
Yep, just as I mentioned in the football power rankings video, my voice is going to try to get through this one. I know it doesn't sound great, but yeah, I apologize for that. But still, yeah, I mean these four teams. Excuse me, these three teams: Vanderbilt, Georgia, South Carolina. I think right now it's just you're starting to see them against different competition. You see some flashes of what they could do this season. You also see some things that certainly going to have to be fixed, I think, before they get in SEC play, if they're going to be able to win some games in the league. So, yeah, I mean, I think these are, again, South Carolina is just kind of, we said, right, even after that Clemson win, we're like, well, look at the difference. They beat South Carolina State 80-77. They turn around and beat Clemson by 2. But what do you make of them? Well, since then, they got blown out against Colorado State, lost to Davidson, blown out against Furman. They beat USC upstate. But I just think this is a team that we picked at the bottom to start the season. I just think it's going to be an uphill climb for them to try to, get out of that bottom four. In Georgia has some upside, but it's a team that, I don't say played terrible in their two best opponents of the season against Wake Forest and UAB, but they've still got a ways to go too, and they're going to play Hampton and Florida A&M next, so they'll take care of business in those two. And then Vandy, we mentioned just kind of I don't know, like I still don't know what to make of Vandy. I think they're a hard team to figure out at this point. So yeah, these were the three that I think were no doubt in terms of being in these spots right here.
Okay, now we get to the tier of disappointment. These are the two most disappointing teams in the league so far. Florida at 11, Texas A&M at 10. A&M 2 weeks ago just got obliterated by Colorado, which seems to beat good teams and lose to bad teams. A&M, I just wondered, there were a lot of parts there, but I wasn't sure after Henry Coleman the third if there was a lot of star power on that roster, and that is kind of how it's playing out so far against the objections of my dog.
Well, Oreo also not happy with the Aggies to this point, it seems. But they did, I know they lost those two games and kind of disappointing to lose to Murray State and Colorado. But, they did come back and beat Loyola Chicago, which I don't think is, the same Loyola Chicago team we talked about in recent years. They won at DePaul. I mean, DePaul is probably second worst team in the Big East, I guess. But, they did win the game. And so I don't want to take that away from A&M is that, they have picked up 2 wins in a row and maybe starting to figure some things out, although I think they've got a long way to go. But yeah, I mean, just feels like that team that's just kind of missing something. And, maybe it's just as simple as Quentin Jackson, or, just those kind of things that we talked about coming into the season. And then for Florida, boy, I mean, I don't know what to make of Florida, because, they talk about up and down. I mean, even in that Kennesaw State game, which was 3 weeks ago now, there were some ups and downs. Now they won by 10, but you could see some things like, yeah, I don't know. And of course, they lose to Florida Atlantic, beat Florida State, lose to Xavier, beat Oregon State, get blown out against West Virginia. Um, I don't know what to make of Florida. I think they are clearly still a work in progress, and they've got to, Chris, they got to figure it out soon too, because they got 2 games next, Florida A&M and Stetson, which don't forget Stetson beat Florida State not too long ago as well, and South Florida. Florida's got that game coming against UConn. UConn is one of the best teams I've seen this season.
Yeah, UConn
period.
looked really good in beating Alabama.
UConn's the kind of team that can win it all just because of how they play, and I mean they are really good, and I think that's going to be a game that's kind of your barometer of where Florida's at, mid-December, because that's going to be a challenge. So Florida's got some stuff they got to figure out defensively. I don't think they're where they want to be just yet. and I think that goes without saying. They're giving up some points, but I think offensively they're still trying to kind of find what their flow should be on that side of the floor. So yeah, I'm disappointed in Florida thus far, but I think when you have Colin Castleton, I think they'll still be able to figure it out. But yeah, they've just been so inconsistent so far.
Okay, the number 9 team standing alone, the Ole Miss Rebels, who are a narrow loss to who was it from being unbeaten?
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. There we go. Yeah, that was on Sunday, amidst all the NFL and college football talk. But yeah, Ole Miss's best wins. Well, 2 decent wins: Stanford and Florida Atlantic, beating Stanford in the tournament last weekend. Kermit Davis has got a very solid team so far, and a big game coming up in a week with Memphis.
Yeah, I think if you consider that Deshaun Ruffin still hasn't played, and Amari Abram has started to really take off. He's had at least 17 points in the last 3 games. That's been really helpful, I think, for this team. Because again, you know what you're kind of getting from Matthew Morrell, and his shooting's been a little up and down in some of these past couple games. But I think Ole Miss is the team that we said it kind of going into the season. And we kind of slotted Missouri and Ole Miss as the 2 teams maybe that you qualify as sleepers. And I think once they get Ruffin back, whenever that is, that'll give them another big boost. And like you said, big game at Memphis coming up on Saturday. I think defensively, they'll have a chance to keep themselves in that game and really, kind of make it their style. If they can do that, then I think they got a shot to win that one, just based on kind of seeing where they've come from. But yeah, I think maybe an incomplete grade for Ole Miss too just yet because they are still playing without one of their best players, and it's just a matter of seeing when they get him back and then I think the upside goes even higher for them.
Okay, we've got a tie in the next spot. Before we get there, a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Stakes. Get your predictions on the record. You can predict anything in the game for free. See how you measure up against fans and influencers. You can flex your wins, broadcast your take to our community of sports fans with just a few taps on your phone, and earn credibility. Build your public predictions track record by winning competitions and earning NFT trophies for making the perfect call. Head to playwithstakes.com/14. Use your invite code Southeastern14 for a double welcome bonus. Free to join, free to play. It's not a betting app, it's a predictions app. Lots of fun to be had by going to Stakes. So help out the folks who help us. Okay, our tie is Missouri and LSU, which, boy, these teams have taken opposite paths to get to that spot. Missouri has just destroyed everything in its path, but hasn't really played much of anybody yet. And LSU had one of the stranger losses of the year as the only blemish on its record.
Yeah, I mean, I told you I flipped these 2 teams a lot, putting our rankings together this week, and maybe I'm just trying not to, show my Dennis Gates bias too much. But I did
Well,
flip
look,
these teams.
Missouri is 37 in Ken Palm, and I said before the season I thought this was a team that had a better chance of getting to the NCAA tournament than people gave it credit for. Now, look, Missouri's got a lot to do between now and then, but I don't think it's completely crazy to think the Tigers might be this good.
No, I don't either. And I had a couple of Missouri fans send me, reply on Twitter and ask me, where are you at now? 7 games in, like you said, they could be the sleeper in the league. You said you're very high on the roster. And here's exactly what I said. I said, look, for starters, and I didn't say this specifically, but I said this to you, Chris. They're beating teams the way they should beat them, and in some
Yeah.
cases, I know that first 2 games were a little shaky against Southern Indiana and Penn, but since then, they're putting up points, they're dominating teams, and that's what you want to see, right? Because in a lot of those instances, that's what they should be doing. Although, like I said, I think beating Coastal Carolina by 38 was somewhat impressive. Um, but then I said, look, the offense is undeniable. They are a team that's going to put up points this season, even against SEC competition. I don't think you're going to see a lot of 40-point games from Missouri and SEC. They just got too many options on the offensive side and the way they play, and they're turning people over. I said that's what they're going to do. Dennis Gates, they're going to be aggressive on defense. They're going to turn defense into offense and make it a lot easier. But also said, look, there's clearly, I think when it comes to rebounding, defense, there are still things that are being worked on, and I think they're still trying to find the right rotations. in what's going to be Tuesday night's going to be their first real test, right? They go to Wichita State on Tuesday night. That's a tough environment, as you know, and how they play. They've got they're what 4-2. I mean, this is not your vintage sort of Wichita State team, right? But it's still a team that is going to challenge them. I think in some different ways, especially on the defensive side of the floor. So I have really liked what I've seen from Missouri, and I think this will be a nice test to kind of see where they're at. But like I said, I think the offense is undeniable. It's just if they can kind of fix those things defensively and in rebounding the ball, that could be tough to beat. So,
Do you know what Missouri really needs to fix?
what's that?
It's free throw defense. get
Yeah,
those hands in the air, guys.
Teams are shooting
Or some,
81.9%. Yeah.
Get your taunts worked out. Get your student section more engaged. I don't know what it takes. When you're giving up 82% of free throws, that you might be running into a little bit of bad luck there.
The ultimate Ken Pom stat, right? So
yeah, I always. We'll take a sidebar here. Like, when you do defensive rankings, can you? I don't know. Seems like you might ought to make an adjustment for just blind dumb luck.
Yeah.
Potentially, that just sort of stands out. Missouri's defensive profile at KenPom is fascinating right now. Missouri number 1 in the country in steal percentage. So like all this talk of Missouri's defensive issues, they're number 4 in the country in forcing turnovers. Now they're getting clobbered on the backboards. 347th in offensive rebounds given up. And in other words, defensive rebounding. This is a wild profile, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's and look, I know people point to the schedule too. Like the schedule is, what is the schedule ranked in KenPom, Chris? It's probably
not good,
near the bottom.
Let me look that up.
361. So strength of schedule.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
are there 361 teams? I guess there are now.
I suppose.
It must be.
So yeah, I mean,
they're playing the worst schedule in the country, and yet the worst schedule in the country is hitting the highest free throw percentage, or one of the highest.
I mean,
it is making my dog very upset. Oh my goodness!
Wow, what is that? Is that like? Is he Arkansas fans that are going to be watching? Is he calling the Hogs? We'll get to that in a minute, Oreo. Calm down, man. He's trying to call the Hogs. So
he's going to be getting it. My Lord.
All right, Chris, you take care of that. I'm going to talk about LSU for a second.
You go for LSU.
I'll go for LSU. LSU, like you said, lost. I think it was the clock malfunction in the Cayman Islands, where I think they'd hit a shot and the clock didn't start on time or something. So Kansas State won that game by 2, but they bounced back, beat Wofford. I think LSU is also still one of those teams when you think about all the different parts that they have, new pieces, But I think what has stood out, and we've said this from the start, Adam Miller being what Adam Miller can be has been the biggest part of this. He's playing so well. He's hitting a lot of threes. And I think that's why LSU, for me, their stock just keeps rising because they've got a good balance. I think, roster-wise, they've got upperclassmen. They've got a guy like Adam Miller. And really, I just think there's a lot to like about this team. They're just kind of, I don't know. They're one of those teams that I think really hasn't taken off yet, but you can kind of see that potential is there. So.
Okay, we've got our probably our good surprise team next. Mississippi State at 6, 28 in KenPom. Chris Jans is quietly doing a really good job there. State has just picked up 2 wins over Marquette and Utah. Close wins, probably NIT type teams there. So, I mean, State has not run a gauntlet of a schedule yet, probably has not played an NCAA tournament caliber team, but those things matter. And State had a lot of experienced parts coming back. Toulouse Smith is one of the better players in the league, and Shaquille Moore, DJ Jeffries, guys like that have played a lot of ball, and so far it's working out.
I mean, listen, here's a stat you need to know. We talked about the offense. I kind of half jokingly said they may be the worst shooting team in the league. I don't think they are right now. Free throw wise, they may be. They're shooting 59% from the line, but They haven't allowed more than 55 points this season. They played 6 games. They played 3 against top 125 Ken Palm teams, and they have not allowed more than 55 points in a game.
Hmm.
So, like, they are defending, and that is exactly what you want to see if you're Mississippi State. Because I said, I mean, the offensively, I don't know, that they're going to be a crisp offensive team all the time, but they are defending and they are winning games with their defense. Because again, too, right? It's like you've won 2 games this season, Marquette and Utah, without even hitting the 60-point mark. I mean, that shows you what you're doing on the defensive side of the floor. So, um, yeah, credit to Chris Jans and that entire team because they are defending. Tolo Smith is a first team All SEC guy right now, in my opinion. He is really doing a lot of things well. And I think you're talking about a team that, I definitely underestimated, but I also didn't expect them to play the kind of defense they have so far. So,
Okay, we've got a tie here next at 4. Auburn and Kentucky. And I really I don't know what to do with either team, to be honest with you. I want to see Auburn shoot the 3 better, which is going to be a part of what Auburn does. Kentucky, I watched the Gonzaga game. I watched the Michigan State game. Didn't like what I saw, but I look at the parts and think, man, they've still got a ton of parts. They just haven't figured it out. I mean, look, this is November. If somebody wants to take this clip and replay it in March when things have gone one way or for another of each teams, I'm sure you could do it and have some fun with this. And we may end up looking ridiculous, but all you can kind of call is what you think in late November. And that's what we think about both these teams is that we've got some questions for various reasons. We think they're really good teams and really talented teams, and you love the track record of both coaches, but you watch them and you see some things you'd like to see resolved at the same time.
I mean, look, these are not March power rankings. These are November 28th power rankings. You can say this team's going to be better than this team. That's great. We'll get there. Like, we'll rank them higher once we see it in that spot. But right now, what we've seen, I I think I'm probably a little more sold on Auburn than you probably are at this point. But that's not
Yeah.
to say that I don't think there are, potential issues there. Because look, I mean, they're coming off a 2. I mean, that Northwestern win, you know what? It was ugly, 43-42. You don't see that a lot, but you'll take
But
it
it says
because,
something.
but you found a way to win the game, right?
Yeah.
St. Louis, good team. Auburn finds a way to win that game. They win by 5. Um, so I think, if anything, we may be underselling Auburn a little bit here. Although I said I think I'm probably a little more sold on them at this point because of their defense, and I said that going into the season, they're going to be an elite defensive team, and they have been to this point. Another team that is done a lot of things well on that side of the floor. So,
Well, look, we had Kentucky as our one. I believe we did. I know I did before the season.
yeah,
And I don't take that lightly 3 weeks in, right? I mean, yes,
right.
I watched Kentucky. I hated the way it played the Gonzaga game, hated the way it ended the Michigan State game. We have talked about Kentucky's issues and potential problems. I just find it hard to believe that between now and the end of the season, with all that talent, Kentucky's not going to figure it out. And so, yeah, I could have easily gone Auburn over Kentucky based on the win-loss record so far, but I don't. I'm not the kind of guy that I'm going to completely throw out what I thought coming into the season based on that. Now, look, if Kentucky were 2-4 at this point or something, then sure. But I mean, a break either way, and Kentucky's a one-loss team at this point. They go into overtime with Michigan State. I'm just saying, I think that as bad as it's looked for Kentucky at times compared to expectations, I still believe in the talent.
I'm 100% with you. I still think they're the most talented team maybe in the league. But I think again, we're doing these power rankings in late November, and I think when it comes to that point, you can look at where you had them to start the season, and I'm somewhat agree with you on this, because if you're projecting ahead, do I think Kentucky is going to wind up being the 4th or 5th best team in the SEC? I don't. I think they will be significantly higher than that. But I also don't think we can discredit what the other teams around them have done. And that's why, again, someone has to be slotted 1 through 14. And for me, I think at least 3 teams have better overall, performances at this point than what we've seen from Kentucky. And again, you put Auburn. I mean, the 3 teams I think everyone knows right now that we've not talked about are going to be Tennessee, Arkansas, and Alabama. Um, but again, I think you're comparing 5 teams that are what, Chris? These are the 5 teams. We said this was the cutoff point to start the season. We said I think there's
Yeah.
a clear top 5. You can put them in
And I
whatever order
think
you
there
want to put them
still
in.
is.
I do too. I think Mississippi State can get there. But I think right now there is a clear top 5 in my opinion, and that hasn't changed. The order has changed, but I still think you're looking at 5 teams that are top 25 teams. It's just in whatever kind of order you think they should be in right now, which let's be honest, doesn't mean anything other than just what we think. Like it's just our opinion. Um, you can put these 5 teams in any order. If you want to base it on talent, you can move Kentucky higher. You want to base it on just on production and what's been done to this point, you put Auburn higher because they haven't lost a game. But yeah, we're debating something I think that's very small in the grand scheme of things because I don't think there's a lot that separates these 5 teams. I think there's a cutoff point at 5, but again, I also don't want to take anything away from Mississippi State because I think they've been much better than I thought.
I don't know that State can crack the top 5. I just don't see State in the stratosphere with these teams.
I don't know, man. I've watched Mississippi State and the way they defend, they are going to ugly some games up and they're going to beat some of
Yeah.
these teams, I think. Um, I'm just saying, I think Chris Jans has got a team there that offense will be an issue at times, but I don't know, man. The way they defend, I don't discount that they can't crack into that top group, but we'll see. So,
We have a tie at 2 between
hmm,
Tennessee and Alabama.
really,
For full disclosure, Blake had Alabama 2, and I had Tennessee 2. And each of us had the other one at 3. I feel like Tennessee, since that Colorado loss, has really started to play to its identity.
they're not
Now,
shooting
Alabama, right, which is it's a good thing. I watch Alabama. I feel like Alabama is probably more talented than Tennessee, but I think that across the not that Tennessee's not talented, but I just like how long and lean and athletic that team is. And look, Tennessee's got some of the same thing, right? I think that Tennessee is an older team. You can see that sometimes in the way the Vols play versus the way that Alabama plays. That's where I differentiated. But if you want to tell me I'm wrong and Alabama's better than Tennessee, I'm not going to yell at you either.
Well, first of all, no one's wrong when it comes to power rankings. As again, they are completely subjective.
Right.
I know we will be told we are wrong about something, but again, these are objective opinions on what we think. Like you can have your own power rankings, and guess what? We're not going to argue with you because they're your power rankings, just as these are ours. So you're not wrong about any of this. But yes, Tennessee, and I kind of joked about how they weren't shooting as many threes, although they did 12 against Kansas, and that's just what you want to see more of, right? If they're not going to take maybe as many as they did in those first several games, which we talked about, which is kind of wild to see 44, 37, and those kind of numbers. But yeah, I think they figured out their offensive identity. Let's be honest, too. I think Julian Phillips is starting to, he had that one game, the 25-point game against USC, so you can see what's there. I think that's a big boost for them. And as we said, too, I mean, just Vescovy hitting shots is going to be important. And remember, they did win Battle for Atlantis, beat Kansas, USC, Butler, with no Josiah Jordan James. And I thought that was very impressive
Yeah.
to see. But, something that our loyal supporter, Connie, has pointed out, she pointed out before this game against Kansas, 2 guys in particular, I think, that you can see getting some quality minutes. That's Meshack and Adu. And I think they've kind of stepped up and been able to help them in some pretty big spots, too. And, in different areas, whether it's rebounding or and such. So I think that's been impressive about Tennessee. But yes, I think we're kind of splitting hairs on these 2 teams because with Alabama, here's my thing with Alabama is, I mean, they beat Michigan State and North Carolina, and North Carolina was the number 1 team in the country at the time. I know you can say, well, North Carolina lost to Iowa State and all that, and I get it, but I mean, he still beat the number 1 team in the country at the time. They beat a Michigan State team that we saw, beat Kentucky. Um, so I mean, I think that Alabama, their late game offense in that quadruple overtime game against North Carolina, I kind of said that in our live stream. It was ugly. Like both teams didn't seem like they had any idea what they were doing in their late game offense to try to win that game. But Alabama found a way to win. And losing to UConn, I think we're going to look back and realize that UConn may be one of the top 3 teams in the country right now, with
UConn's really
Texas,
freaking good.
with Texas and Houston, in my opinion. Um, so I think again, take your pick on Alabama, Tennessee, but I think both these teams are second weekend good for sure. And yeah, I mean it's just Alabama. Remember too, Chris. Alabama's got Houston coming up on December the 10th. They got Memphis. They got the Zags. So they're going to play that gauntlet. And I think we'll learn even. I mean, what a schedule, right? Based on that, and then if you're looking at it from Tennessee standpoint, I think Tennessee's got Maryland and Arizona, in the next couple of weeks. So those are 2 more games that you kind of add to the potential resume boosters for these 2 teams.
I thought USC was better than it was in Ken Palm. The USC only 63 as of Monday morning. By the way, speaking of Ken Palm, go ahead.
That loss to Florida Gulf Coast really hurt USC to start the season.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Dunk City gets revenge there. Speaking of Ken Palm, there are some things that just don't look right. I mean, I say don't look right. I'm not criticizing Ken Palm, but I'm like looking up this morning, seeing Villanova at 56, seeing North Carolina at 21, Duke at 20, and Kansas at 18. It just feels like the college basketball world has been turned upside down a bit here.
Again, I love, some people don't like Ken Palm, some people do. I think, though, you have to go into it with the understanding that it takes a little while for things to get to where they need to be. You do need more than just a
he has
5-6
preseason
game
bias baked in, which I don't think is a bad thing. I don't say that disparagingly.
Yeah. No, I think that it takes probably 10 plus games, in my opinion, for everything to start to get where it needs to be. So,
yeah, Kentucky, by the way, is 4 in Ken Palm and 5 in our SEC rankings. That tells you how fluid these things are this time of year. Okay, that brings us to Arkansas at 1. Hogs got a big win over San Diego State. Had a shot in that Creighton game, but couldn't finish. Creighton's a really good team. Arkansas doing this without Nick Smith, doing it with Eric Musselman losing his mind after the San Diego State game. Hogs number 1, and just a very entertaining team to watch.
I mean, again, I think, I could have realistically maybe made the argument for, like I said, you could probably make the argument for 4 or 5 teams here, depending on what you value more. Just watching games and seeing everything I've seen to this point, I just think Arkansas is still the team that has the highest upside, in my opinion. And again, that's we're not projecting ahead, right? But I think what we've seen to this point, I mean, they're a couple plays away from beating Creighton. They beat San Diego State in overtime. I just think they have all the pieces. And again, when Nick Smith comes back, whenever that is, they're going to add another piece that's a top 5 SEC player, one of the top players in the country, maybe. And I just think right now, I love the way this Arkansas team plays, and that's why I voted them at the top spot. But again, it's you can compare, and I know people do this, compare resumes and stuff. You could say, well, they don't have this and this. That's fine, but I'm just basing it again on my opinion of who the teams I've watched, and I honestly don't think there's a big difference, as I said, between the top 5 teams right now. Even Kentucky, I know, has 2 losses, but I still think you can make the argument for Kentucky to be perhaps up here, not at 1 maybe, but 2 or 3. But I just, I give the nod to Arkansas right now, and we'll see if that continues. But I just think, again, we talked about it in that video we did after the Creighton game, and I won't repeat it all again. But I just think that they have it, whatever it is, and so I put Arkansas at number 1 here.
All right, thanks for watching our SEC Power Rankings presented by Stakes. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you again next week.